Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Sun Up on 7. It's time for a conversation that I've been looking forward to, and probably you as well. We're going to be talking about narcissism, narcissistic abuse. So, did you know there's a day that's Narcissistic Abuse Awareness Day? It's commemorated on June 1st, and what we celebrate are the persons that have moved on from that narcissistic abuse, which is pretty interesting. Thank you, Amy, for that perspective. So, to talk to us about what the day is about, and of course, talk about narcissism and the definition and how it manifests itself, we have Gemma Williams, an activist. Gemma, good morning. How are you feeling?
I'm doing good.
Yes?
Thank you.
Awesome. I love having you here, Gemma. I love you so much. And we're also having Amy Jex, no stranger to our couch.
Hi,
Amy,
good morning. Wonderful to be here.
Thank you so much for joining us once more. Bring out this perspective of Narcissistic Abuse Awareness Day.
I'm really excited about this conversation because, we have not touched on this ever.
Yes.
So you guys are really going to bring this to life so we can be able to highlight it.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about narcissism. I think maybe to put it into context so people can understand, we'll start off maybe with a real life experience of what it's like to be living with a narcissistic person, working with a narcissistic person. So, Ms. Gemma,
Okay.
I don't know if you can be able to provide some context for us.
Yes, I do. Actually, I have asked around some people who I know have experienced narcissistic abuse in the work environment and share their stories. So here goes. I was transferred to a particular office within the public service. Upon my arrival, the head of department welcomed me. She informed me of her joy to have me join the office as my professionalism, experience, and spirituality preceded me. Most importantly, she said, I was of the same color as her. As time progressed, I noted that she did not base the decisions in the office in accordance with the public service regulations. I noted too, once I started addressing such issues, she started treating me differently. There were times she would not even acknowledge me in the office. Nonetheless, I did as I was assigned to do. When I started doing research to help the public officers within the office, it became a major issue. I was called into the office. First, it was to tear down the officers, trying her utmost best to show their non-productivity, although she took away their duties and responsibilities. When I continued to resist, the situation in the office became there. Not only for me, but for most members of the office. There were very high absenteeism. People were calling in sick because they did not know what to do or how to deal with the matter. Although their salaries were docked, they still stayed away from work. Many days I too wanted to stay home, but I had to remember what I was sent there to do and to set an example to be a support for those who were being abused by the HOD. Senior officers were treated like children, being shouted at and being verbally abused. Productivity was at a high time low. But how could officers produce when they are being abused? One day, I was called into the office and was asked my opinion on certain matter. When I gave my opinion, I was told I was disrespectful. Now that blew my mind because it was like I was being set up. I was called in another time to reprimanded regarding a request and a query I made. This lady banged on the desk, reminding me of who she is in that office, reminding me that not even the highest authority in the land can do anything about the way she managed her office. I was transferred after many fights. I breathed a sigh of relief, but not for long, as she made it her business to approach my new HODs, trying to throw me under the bus. Her vindictive nature had no end. Though I was no longer working with her, she wanted to ensure that I would be hurt. I never saw such evil in the public service before. Sadly, it continues today.
Wow. That's something. And I thank you for sharing that story, Gemma, because whenever we think about narcissism and narcissistic abuse, we often think about emotional relationships like partners, but you shedding the light into something different, which is your work environment, which I feel that we often tend to interact in such spaces with such persons. So it really is.
I just really want to point out is just This is a real life story, and the thing that kind of stands out for me is like how continuous abuse really is. Like you can move wrong from that person, but that person can evidently try their best to still be at you. And so that is something I think really key for people to understand how like it can follow you.
Yes, it can. And sadly, narcissists in the work environment, they will destroy you to no end until you decide to either resign from your job,
You get transferred.
you're transferred.
Yeah.
You know, so it's very, very complicated because in this time and age, we do not want to leave our jobs. Sometimes we do enjoy what we're doing, but
Like bread and butter.
yes, and to deal with someone who is narcissistic is not easy at all.
Yeah. Amy, so to bring you into this conversation and put some more light into what narcissism and narcissistic behavior can be manifest itself, can you enlighten us there?
There's so much to unpack after that story,
Yes.
right? So where do we start? First, I'd like to point out that narcissistic abuse syndrome is not necessarily perpetrated by someone who has narcissistic personality disorder. The diagnosis of that narcissistic personality disorder is a person who meets specific criteria where their personality is inflexible. Now, when we talk about narcissistic abuse syndrome, we talk about someone who is being selfish on purpose and in that way emotionally abusive in a way where they manipulate the person in order to meet their needs. So that doesn't have to be done by someone who meets criteria for narcissistic personality disorder, which to be diagnosed with any personality disorder, it takes a number of years, good observation, a lot of things. But as Ms. Gemma knows, you can experience narcissistic syndrome, narcissistic abuse syndrome in a number of environments. We usually hear about it because we hear the term love bombing a lot these days, which, when the relationship started, we were so great together and the person provided this attention. And it's a key word I've heard over the past few years. I get love bombed. And so that can be done in a romantic relationship by parents in a workplace.
Yeah.
So it's not limited necessarily in a romantic context. And when we see it, you've seen it at school with a teacher and a student, right? Oh, I saw your eyes open up just now.
Yes, because I know about some, but you continue.
And so when we talk about this, what this day about is on June 1st, is for bringing awareness to this. And just as Mr. Franco was enthusiastic about Environment Day, you have to talk about your personal environment as well. The trend for the last few years has been get the toxic people out of your life.
Yeah.
It's needed.
And this is exactly what the narcissistic cycle of abuse is. You feel that toxicity because first you have this lovey-dovey stage, In all abuse, we have that, honeymoon period. We call this, the love bombing stage. So it starts off like that. And then there's a trigger. And then with that trigger, you get devalued after that. Your self-worth goes down. So you start questioning yourself. And then after that, the person discards you like, well, you're not important to me. I walk out of this relationship. You don't need to be at this job because you're not worth it. You're a terrible student. What kind of child are you? And then comes the narcissistic part, which after that, they pull you back in. Like a vacuum cleaner, they pull you back in. And it starts over. Once they start getting your attention back, you go back into the whole cycle of love bombing, triggering incident. Ms. Gemma, you...
Yes. The thing is, like in the work environment, let's say the narcissist know that you want to escape, like resign or transfer or things like that. You have to do those things silently because they will stop you from even getting a transfer. They will stop you from anything, So in the work environment, if you want to do an escape, you have to plan that. You have to reach out to people and not let narcissists know that you are trying to escape.
So it's like a secret thing you kind of have to.
Yes,
operate
you
on.
can. Yes, and along with that,
It's similar as in any abusive situation because you are seeing that this person is trying to get back into your good graces. And the thing is, for anyone who has experienced something like this, you already have a dynamic where this person can manipulate you. So it's easier for this person to keep a hold of you.
yes,
So why let you escape?
Yeah.
It's just easy to continue. And remember, when we have this, one thing that must be pointed out is that they target your self-worth,
sadly they do.
Yeah.
right? They target your self-worth.
Right. That's what I was thinking. That there needs to be something that gravitates a narcissist towards you. Right. I'm thinking your self-esteem, your self-worth, all of those things. I'm thinking can make
vulnerability.
somebody vulnerable.
It's not a necessary criteria.
Okay.
Because there are many people who walk into this type of relationship with very high self-worth and very high self-esteem, and over the course of this relationship they break down because of the manipulation. So it's not necessarily that you are groomed in a particular way that makes you a
Okay.
target,
All right.
because it could be someone who walks in and you've heard it from a lot of women. I don't know how this happened to me. And you have heard it in workplaces as well as in relationships. I went in, I know my worth, I know everything, but somehow I just can't leave.
That too, and it doesn't only happen to women. Just to add to your, it happens to men too. And it doesn't happen only to women in the work environment, but to men as well, right? And one thing to deal with narcissistic abuse in the work environment is to always document everything.
Okay.
Document when you're having an issue. Sending emails, if you need to do recordings, if you need to write it down, if you need to let them sign, you need to let them see that you are documenting every single thing, because they can easily manipulate you in the work environment and say, oh, what you said was a lie, but you haven't documented. So to have it might not be easy to set boundaries in the work environment, and you might get more destroyed if you do set boundaries, but not setting boundaries is giving them power. So it's so important to not stop setting boundaries.
I like
All right. So another thing is to always be aware that narcissistic abuse can also be amongst co-workers. So it's so important to be careful who you discuss your personal issues with.
I like that.
All right.
So I wanna ask something. I'm not asking people to go about diagnosing persons, but what are the things that they should be looking out when it comes to somebody being a narcissist?
Well,
That's a
like I
lot.
said, self-centeredness.
Okay.
So it's all about them. Poor empathy. They can't put themselves in other people's shoes. No sympathy. They kind of need things in their way. So you can look at a lot of those kinds of those things. So when you look at someone who's a narcissist, it's a pattern that they have to manipulate people to do things that they want. So at the end of the day, they're the more important ones.
And they love to get praise at work
Yes.
too. The thing is, you have to praise their hairstyle. You have to praise the way how they manage you. You just have to boost their ego. If you boost their ego, you become the narcissist favorite in the work environment.
Until a triggering thing happens.
Yes, until something happens.
Again, going back to the clinical difference is someone with narcissistic personality disorder is more likely to experience narcissistic injury because underneath everything, they have a fragile self-esteem. Whereas a person who does not have narcissistic personality disorder but behaves with these narcissistic criteria, they are very likely to have a very high self-esteem. because again, they
Okay.
truly believe they deserve all this.
Okay.
Very entitled
All right.
people.
So as we wind down this conversation, I want to ask you, Gemma. So what's happening on June 1st? What are you doing as an activist? What are you calling collectively as viewers to do on June 1st?
On June 1st, I would just want everyone to know that it is World Narcissistic Abuse Awareness Day, and to wear purple, because it's similar to domestic violence, but it's very, very separate, and we normally acknowledge domestic violence, but narcissistic abuse is also important and needs to address.
Okay.
So it's more about awareness, and to let everyone know that it's happening in the family. So everyone needs to be acknowledged, even the narcissist, psychopath, and sociopaths themselves, because they themselves have been abused. So it's not just about targeting narcissists, psychopaths, sociopaths, but to acknowledge that narcissistic abuse do exist, and how
Alright.
can we address it in our society.
Okay. So for the persons that want to get more information, or maybe you have a community or a support group, is there such thing that happens you're facilitating?
I do have a support group. I do try to address narcissistic abuse on my social media. I also try to have a support group, but for now it's just on
Information
my
awareness.
social media.
Okay.
And you can contact me at gemmasimone11@gmail.com, and maybe we can create a support group as a community.
Definitely. That would really
Yeah.
work a lot.
Hoping we can have another conversation on that exact day too as well, to see if we can promote more, because I think there's so much realms that we can dive into. Just workplace
Yes.
we were touching base on, but we haven't talked about how it is with a parent, how it is like with friends, around your friend circle,
Yes.
relationships, because we always think about the whole the romantic relationships, but platonic relationships can have that. So definitely something very important.
I would
to be
truly
able to-
appreciate that.
Oh, definitely. Like Miss Gemma, you to come back on. I want to wear purple. Kevin, hopefully
Okay.
you wear purple too.
I have to go buy a purple.
You have to go buy a purple shirt.
Gemma, bring,
Gemma.
Gemma, bring me something
Yes.
purple, yeah?
And here is my shirt as well to represent the day.
Ooh, I love it.
So
Nice.
it's narcissistic abuse, and also to be
Yeah.
aware.
Narcissistic abuse survivor.
Yes.
I love it.
All right.
Yes.
So-
And the main title is If My Wounds Were Visible, because narcissistic abuse, it doesn't have no scars, just emotional scars that no one sees.
I love it.
Those are the ones sometimes hardest to heal.
Yeah.
And so thank you so much for this conversation. Looking
Thank
forward
you
to the
too.
next one. Shanta would work Panata already ahead of time. And so with that, guys, we go to our next commercial break. When we're back, we're going to be talking about STEM with BHS. Stay tuned for that exciting conversation. We'll be right back.
Yeah.